Fitzroy Drive, there's the whole city's right there.
Okay, but at 2 o'clock in the morning, when everything's closed, where are you going to go?
I don't know. I'd figure it out. I'm not going to sit in my car in the middle of a fucking snowstorm.
Sure, people ran out of gas. People were running gas stations with gas cans. It was a nightmare.
I remember seeing images. They had video of buses that were left open and snow was just blowing through the buses. like literally, it was as if the nuclear holocaust happened and what was left over was just empty buses and things in the middle of the street. That's what's it gave you an image of what it will be like. But yes,
yeah.
I
know what you're saying about that theft feel, that dirty feel. The first week I lived in California, I lived in San Leandro, California, which isn't the nicest part of Northern California, let's just say. And I parked my truck out front. And I came out in the morning, and my windows, all of them, I'm sorry, not all of them, my side passenger window was shattered out, and my radar detector was stolen, my CDs were all stolen, my glove boxes just, ripped down, and all my shit was thrown out of it, and my center console's ripped up, and I'm like a pack rat in a sense in my truck this time of my life. Uh-huh. I had every paycheck, I'd rip the one stuff out and shove it inside, and I couldn't even push it down in the center console. There's so much, all that was just thrown everywhere. And then you literally get in your car, and I was defeated. Mm-hmm. First time away from home, the whole not knowing shit. Really,
right. You just feel. For me, it was like, man, I felt so stupid. I never thought it was going to be an issue. I just never. You always say it's not going to be me. And literally, I was that dumb that I was just...
Now you lock it and double check and triple check.
Yes, every time. The next morning, I left for work, and I was driving to work, and I was like, did I forget to lock my door? I think I might have forgot to lock my door. And I was like, oh, shit. So
I better go lock my fucking door.
Right, but I was too far to turn around and go back. So I was like... Man, I hope because if not, they're coming back and they're going to steal my TV, and then I will cry real tears.
And you definitely don't want that to happen.
Yeah. So that was my week from hell this last week. So what I want to do now, we're going to go to our first. Or we're going to keep
talking for a minute because I want to make sure I can get him before we go to him.
Gotcha. We are going to dial up our first guest here. We reached out to This is the number one guy we wanted to talk to. We're working on him here, but I'll go back to football and I'll bitch about football for a second, so you can zone out for a minute here, Vito. The Bears. I hate the fucking Bears. Weeks ago I talked about I gave up on the Bears. Well, this week I gambled on the Bears game, and all I needed the Bears to do was score more points than the Lions in the second half of the game, and for the total score to be under 20.5. And everything was looking great. The Bears were kicking ass. Everything was going great. And then, of course, in the last 30 seconds of the game, the fucking Lions score a meaningless touchdown and fuck me out of over $300.
There you go.
The life of a gambler.
Anytime you need the Bears to come through, they don't. You got to learn that.
I did. That's why I'm
playing with them.
They're always
cheering for them. Anything having to do with the Bears.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we are going to go to our first guest. Ladies and gentlemen, the longtime tag team partner and close personal friend of our good friend Marvin, a.k.a. Brain Damage, Deranged. Brandon, are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us, man. I know it's been a tough week for you. I mean, where do you even start? But I guess give people at home that just saw you as his tag team partner, if you could, give us a little bit of how long did you know him? Give us a little bit of depth on your friendship with Marvin.
Well, first of all, him and I started training about the same time. I started in the winter, and he had been starting there probably earlier that spring. So there's only maybe 9 or 10 months difference between the two of us. But I mean, even before we started in with the tag team and stuff, we'd known each other for 8 or 9 years. Prior to that, it was just kind of a natural progression. We started traveling together back in the early 2000s, and I remember one of my first real hardcore matches was against him, and we were both working for JT Lightning in Cleveland All-Pro, and he wanted us to do a barbed wire bat on a pole match, and he wanted to be so critical of our match and stuff, but the poor guy didn't even have his own barbed wire bat. We had to bring that ourselves. And, I mean, you know, granted, it was probably both of us one of our first, you know, especially, it wasn't tag team, it wasn't against another guy that could kind of lead us through the match. It was, you know, me versus him, and we just kind of had to feel our way through it. Looking back, it, you know, definitely wasn't one of the best ones we ever had, but at the same time, it wasn't nothing to really scoff about either, I would say. But JT just completely shit all over the whole, you know, the whole match. Nothing was good enough for him. We just didn't get it done for him that day. And I remember in the locker room afterwards, he looked at both of us and told us we'd never be anything in this business. We sucked as hardcore wrestlers, and we should just quit now while we were ahead. There was no future for us. So.
And I can imagine that was a bit of a motivating factor for you guys to really go back and hone your craft a little more, because ultimately you did have more success, and you guys did have that match again against one another at the King of the Death matches for IWA Mid-South, and that was easily I can imagine was better than that first one, I would guess, right?
Well, you tell me. You had a better view of it than I did.
It is one of the most impressive hardcore matches I've ever witnessed live. You two guys went out there and beat the fuck out of each other in front of all those fans on that big stage. Talk a little bit about, if you will, go if you can't, take yourself back to what you guys were thinking right before you went out there. I mean, it's such a huge stage, King of the Death matches. It's, you know, for deathmatch guys, that is the pinnacle, if you will. That's where the most eyes are really going to be watching, and you guys really had an opportunity to go out there and take it by the throat, if you will. Talk a little bit about, you know, if you can, go back to that moment and what you guys were thinking.
Well, you know, it was, at the time, it was for us, it was either put up or shut up. Either we, you know, show what we've got, or else, you know, it's, for me, it was, you know, either time to show it or not. You know, it was make or break, I guess. We'd been having, you know, a pretty good run up until that point, from the beginning of '06 clear until June. Ian was putting us over in good matches and really giving us an opportunity to, as a tag team, to you know, show what we got that way. You know, it wasn't just strictly hardcore. We got to wrestle Toby and Necro in you know, in a couple of death matches, tag team death matches. But then, you know, we also got the chance to work a lot of strong style stuff also. You know, against Chandler McClure and Doodad up there in Chicago, and then
Eric Priest.
I remember we also had I know it was more of like a hardcore match against the Saints, but at the same time, I mean, we also threw in a lot of, you know, basic wrestling stuff and a lot of strong style stuff too. So he, you know, he was feeding us people, giving us a well-rounded, you know, a base to be able to show our skills and stuff. And then, you know, we both had pretty good matches at the first night of King of the Death matches, and kind of just led into it. And I don't even know if he knew. He might have had an idea. I'm not sure. I know we didn't even know, you know, even before the question and answer section that night, that, you know, it was going to be me versus him in the second round.
Well, you know, hey man, it's Vito. What's up? Ian actually had told Sal and I, he pulled us off to the side that night in Indiana when we worked you guys, that he wanted us to work with you guys because you guys were going to take our spot, basically, you know, and you know, being the tag champs and shit, and he was ready to do with you guys what he did with us, only the other way around, where like he took us and put us into the deathmatch world a little bit, and he wanted to take you guys and put you guys into the wrestling world a little bit. So you know, he really liked you guys, and he really saw, you know, a lot of promise with both of you, you know.
Talk a little bit about what Ian meant to your guys' career.
For me, he really, you know, he did more for my career than probably I did. Because up until that point, I was working a lot of, you know, indie shows in Pittsburgh, Detroit. I mean, not that I wasn't doing, you know, hardcore stuff, but I was doing a lot of hardcore stuff like maybe you saw on ECW and stuff. I didn't really get to see, or I didn't really get a chance to do like true deathmatch, you know, a lot of barbed wire, panes of glass, light tubes, it wasn't really being done anywhere else in the country except for, you know, Louisville and then Philadelphia.
That night, Brandon, when you and Marvin did that match, that barbed wire bat match, did you guys reference that first match on the way home? Maybe did you guys like laugh a little bit to yourselves on the way home that at the beginning of your careers that it didn't work, and then tonight or that night it did work?
Honestly, I don't think even. Honestly, until all this stuff happened last week, I had completely even forgotten about that match. I mean, it was just Marvin and I wrestled each other so many times early on in our career that a lot of them aren't. They're just not there anymore. I mean, for lack of all the gimmicks that I've done and everything in the matches and stuff, I'm just not what I used to be. So I know there was one promoter that usually every other weekend he did 3 shows in a row. He'd do one Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, and usually at least one of those nights, if not 2 out of the 3 nights, I was wrestling Marvin on some card somewhere, either in Maryland, West Virginia, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio. I mean, he pretty much stayed in that area, but there's so many different matches that nobody ever got to really see, that we didn't even get to see. I mean, he had such high budget. The guy would bring in. I remember that's where I really got to hang out and meet Brian Knobs and some of the other old times and stuff. Hacksaw and he brought in like Jake every once in a while when he could get a hold of him, and Coco Beware and things like that. But when it actually came down to the production level of the matches and stuff, there was no entranceway. We'd have this huge ice rink venue that we'd wrestle in. That would just hold. I mean, there literally be, for an independent show, there'd be anywhere from 600-700 to 1,000 people there. But
wow.
There was no entranceway. There was no curtain. You just ran out of the locker room and did your thing or whatnot, but there was none of that, let alone there was no videotaping of it whatsoever. So a lot of those are just, I guess, gone by the wayside.
Can you take us back to last week? How did you hear? What did you hear? How did it start for you last week?
Well, Toby's the one that called me, and I was just at the daycare picking my son and daughter up, and my son's he's 3 years old, and I don't know if any of you guys know, but they just aren't very they're not patient, they don't wait for anything. They just Brayden want all the attention on him, and Toby called me right in the middle of all this, and he's like, "Brandon, it's Marvin." And I was like, "What do you mean it's Marvin?" He's like, "He's gone." And I was like, "What? Toby, you better be joking. I don't have time for this bullshit right now." And he just completely lost it. And I guess at that point it really kind of sunk in that, things weren't the same anymore, and it very much was a reality. Toby wasn't joking, and this was, something that was going on. And
do you want to give out? I know that I've seen several posts now as far as the funeral plans, or where people could send. I know they're having a benefit. Do you want to give the information for the benefit at least here, and maybe people want to donate or help?
I really, I guess, wasn't even prepared for this.
Well, here's what we'll do. We'll throw a link on our Facebook page.
Yeah, we'll throw up a link when the interview's over here, so that people, if they want to go help, and I think everyone really should go out there and give a hand. He was a guy that gave a lot to the sport, and this is kind of where you got to give back as fans.
Brandon, one thing I want to talk about is because Vito and I, we travel on the roads. You always have road stories. You and Marvin and Toby, you guys logged a lot of time on the road together. Talk a little bit about what it was like. Was Marvin the grumpy guy in the car? Was he the guy that the jokester? What was his role? Because everyone always has a role in the car. Talk a little bit about travel on the roads and some of the fun road stories that you remember.
He was probably one of the most easygoing guys, just like everybody saw in the locker room. That's pretty much the way it was, when we were traveling too. He didn't really bitch about a whole lot of things. He didn't have to have things his way. Granted, after you've been on the road all weekend and stuff, and you're coming home on a Sunday night, and early Monday morning, in fact, it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, then you can't really help what happens then. But I mean, he'd get upset like at those times and stuff, but for the most part, he was one of the most easygoing guys